Hello, my Aloha tribe, and welcome to the Aloha Perspective, where you get a little bit of something and a whole lot of everything. Happy Wednesday. It is hump day. Anyways, I'm only here for today, and then I'll be back again Monday. I'm just still a little discombobulated, still trying to catch my bearings being back here. And, nothing bad, just dad had a little bit of a relapse. So, so I'm just, but, and I think it's not the change of scenery, it's just the worrying. So it's just kind of about decompressing and getting back into high alert mode. So anyways, I found this on Instagram from an account called Famimind, Famind. Good morning, Muddy. And I really liked this for Self-Care Wednesday. And since this is the only show I'm doing this week, I figured let's make it something good for Self-Care Wednesday, right? So this is things I thought were my personality, but were actually trauma. So if any of you resonate with this, I'm going to read them all through and then I'll go back through and talk about each one. So the first one, being low maintenance. So what it does is it gives what you thought was your personality versus what's the trauma. So being low maintenance, because I learned early to not have needs. Being chill, because showing emotions wasn't safe, so I shut them down. Being funny, because if I could make you laugh, maybe you wouldn't hurt me. Being the strong one, because falling apart wasn't an option, so I never let myself. Being independent, because I learned not to rely on anyone, ever. Being a perfectionist, because mistakes were punished, not understood. So, that's not your personality, that's survival. Now it's time to discover who you really are beyond the coping. So let's get to the first one, being low maintenance, because I learned to not have needs. So these are different kinds of trauma, okay? And, or I should say there are different kinds of trauma and people react to trauma differently. So even though, this feels more like it's, just kind of like a real, I don't know. I can't really speak to that part, but I was going to say this kind of feels like it's that emotional or physical abuse in childhood, right? Not just sexual abuse, but like the physical abuse or emotional abuse where it's like, I don't have time for you, so just deal with it, and sometimes I'm not even sure that was the intention. There are a lot of single parent family homes, and a lot of times the parent is just so tired from working all the jobs, trying to keep everybody together, trying to do all the things. And the trauma responses, or the responses aren't always what you're expecting them to be, even if it's not the right way to respond. It's just kind of like, I can't deal with it anymore. So you come home, you figure you're okay, and you end up taking it out on everybody else around you, which also isn't right. And that could even be, for a dual parent home. It doesn't just have to be a single parent home, but I guess I just pointed that out because it can be a little difficult. So, I had a lot of friends growing up that came from dual parent homes, and then all of a sudden the parents just split, and it's just kind of like, ooh, so being low maintenance because I learned to not have needs. So a lot of times when these kind of things happen, there's always somebody who tries to pick up the slack and tries to take care of things and tries to do everything for everyone else so that everyone else is taken care of, but they don't meet their own needs. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this on Self-Care Wednesday, because this is, sometimes these behaviors go into our adulthood. Now, I'm not a trained therapist. I am not a counselor. I am just speaking from experience. And my experience from these was actually a little bit different. I had the opportunity to be high maintenance in a way, I don't think my mom would have let me be high maintenance, but I didn't have to put my needs, lower than anybody else's because, I had wonderful parents but my own situation being what it was, you spend so much time hiding your secrets from people that you're just exhausted and you don't have time to be anything but low maintenance, to not have needs, to not want anything, outside of like, the pack of candy when you go to the store with your parents, or wanting, all these things. I mean, it was always like a quiet, I wish I had that, I wish I had this, but, it kind of is what it is, right? So it's okay to need things. It's okay to need people. You do not have to learn, or it's time to unlearn not having needs. If you have needs, meet them, even if it's just you that is meeting them. Okay? Because you deserve that. You deserve to take care of yourself. One of the things everyone keeps reminding me since I came back here a couple days ago was, don't forget to take care of yourself. And it's been hard, and I'm readjusting again, like I said. And so, today I'm probably going to go out for a little bit before the home nurse comes. And, Dad's not as bad off as he seems, but there's a lot of dizziness, and, with the dizziness comes falling. So it's just about setting up new routines and everything so that, he can function when he is better. So it's a lot. It's a lot when parents get older. So, he's fairly independent, which also makes it a bit of a struggle because, they don't want to be babied or anything, right? So you're just kind of like, where's that line? So, when it comes to that, remind yourself that you do have your own needs. You do have to take care of yourself as well. So the next one, being chill, because showing emotions wasn't safe, so I shut them down. Now, this, I think, to me, is a Gen X thing. All right. This to me is a Gen X thing. And I say that for this reason. A lot of parents that I guess we call boomers, right? That a lot of our parents that were born around World War II, post World War II, just post, a lot of the baby boomers, they a lot of them were children of parents who really had to cope with the war. Some of them had to cope with being in that war. And so I think in a lot of ways, and I'm just speculating here, that even on the parental side, a lot of them may have shut down and couldn't deal with it. PTSD wasn't really something that was studied back then. Okay. So, a lot of people came home with trauma, and the best way they knew how to deal with it is push it down and don't think about it. And unfortunately, as we know, when you push it down and you don't think about it, sometimes it comes back up without realizing what it actually is. So, that being said, a lot of us were raised with, oh, are you going to cry about it now? Oh, are you going to go off and mope about it now? And I think for us, we were just trying to figure out how to cope with something. Because it's natural to cry about something, whether it's a happy or sad thing. Or, I cry when I'm angry. Like when I get really, really angry, I just start crying, and it'd be like, are you going to cry about it now? And it's just like, and I don't fault my parents for that. It's just, I did when I was younger, because it's like, geez, am I not allowed to have emotions? And it's like, am I not? And, when you get a little older too, and it's just like, oh, well, you cry. So, and then your friends are kind of the same way, right? They're like, oh God, you cry at everything and la la la. But as I got older and as I went through therapy, I realized these are natural reactions for your body. The way I put it is, I was raised Catholic, so a lot of my responses came from religion. It's like, if God didn't want me to have tear ducts, he would not, or if God didn't want me to cry, he wouldn't give me tear ducts. Okay? And you can put that in any way you want. If you're deity, the universe, you're the Big Bang, whatever. If I wasn't meant to cry, I wouldn't have tear ducts, right? So see, Sammy says, I cry angry, happy, and sad. Yeah, me too. It just depends. I mean, especially the happy cries, right? I mean, those are so great. You're just like, oh my God. But we get emotional. It's like saying, you're watching a sad movie and you start crying, and everyone's like, oh, I know, it was so sad. But then if you cry in real life, they're like, what is wrong with you? So, again, we have tear ducts. They're there for a reason, not just to water our eyes and keep all the crap out. All right. There's a reason we have emotions. There's a reason we share them, but be patient with the people. Okay. Because you don't know what other people have gone through that cause them to say, oh, are you going to do this about it now? Oh, are you going to get mad about it now? Or are you going to do, because it's sometimes it's a generational thing. And guess what? If this is something that's happened to you, or this is something that you find yourself doing, you have the opportunity to break that cycle. Okay, to just chop it in half and let it go. And be honest. You don't have to knee jerk and say, well, F you, I can cry if I want. I'm an adult now. No, you can just say, you know what? Just kind of like what I said, right? It's like, well, look, I have tear ducts and I'm going to use them. Or, I get emotional. And I am kind of the person that does wear their emotions on their sleeve. And I don't mean to sometimes. And it's not that I'm dismissing them, because sometimes, but when I'm mad, you can tell when I'm mad. Of course, there is a fine line between my resting bitch face and my angry face. So, and a lot of people be like, are you okay? I'm just like, yeah, I'm just focused. I'm just thinking. So I've been told I have excellent, by a millennial, I have excellent RBF, which again is resting bitch face. And at first I was like, what does that mean? Am I bitchy? And then after that, later I was just like, yeah, I'm going to take that as a compliment. So, it's okay to be chill. All right. Because showing emotions wasn't safe, so you shut them down. It's okay. It's okay. And if you don't want to share your emotions in front of people, that's all right. If you're at work, go to the bathroom, go for a walk, go to your car when you have your break, and just let it all out there, and if you come back, just say, you know what, I had a moment and I let it go, or journal it out. If you don't feel like you're in a safe place to do all this. I swear to you, you guys, I've been sitting here all morning. My nose wasn't itchy, or my nose wasn't runny. My ears weren't itchy. Then all of a sudden I come on here and everything just, Shelly's bodily functions go out of whack. So anyways, being funny, because if I could make you laugh, maybe you wouldn't hurt me. Now, for me, being funny was masking my own pain, was masking all the trauma I'd been through. It was how I dealt with it, so I didn't cry all the time. So I wasn't, just outbursty all the time. It was also something I stifled for a long time because of my trauma, until it kind of came out when I was 16. I say kind of because that was just a start of it slowly seeping out. It was like a slow leak. But after that, it's like I realized, wow, I have a sense of humor. I mean, I'm probably only funny to myself, and that's okay. But a lot of times people will do that. They'll try to be funny, because if you're, if you make someone laugh, or you keep them in a good mood, they're not going to hurt you. Now, I can't speak to people who were raised in a house that was abusive. I mean, I know some people where it was an issue, and but I wasn't there a lot, because they lived farther away. So, and when they did show up, it was kind of like everybody on your best behavior. So, but I can say from people I have known that have been through those situations, where it's like, if I can make you laugh, you won't hurt me. Even with bullies, right? A lot of times people will try to be funny around bullies because they're thinking, okay, well, if I can make them laugh, they're not going to hurt me. But a bully's a bully, and they're going to do it anyways. All they're going to do is make it about themselves. Oh, are you making fun of me now? Oh, blah, blah, blah. And then it makes it worse. But sometimes the being funny does come from a place of fear. Think about a comedian, right? You have comedians, and some of the funniest ones talk about their upbringing or their family life. And we laugh and we giggle because they're putting it in a way that makes it feel less traumatic. But this is stuff that they're drawing on. This is stuff that they're, oh yeah, blah, 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 and it's kind of like, oh, or things that, like the upbringing of the upbringing of the upbringing. And by that, I mean, like, the way your grandparents were raised, to the way your parents were raised, to the way they're raising you. And sometimes the cycles never seem to change. They might get a little bit better, but not a lot better. And so this is why another reason I wanted to go through all of these, because you have the opportunity to break that generational tie, to break that cycle. That's what I keep trying to say, break that cycle. And, it can be hard because we don't know. Parents, at least, I don't know so much about now, like all the people my age who have had kids, if they're a little more open or if they're breaking those cycles. I know a lot of millennials are breaking those cycles. But when it comes to the generation, like the people that are my parents' age, a lot of times it's hard for them to break that cycle. And so, the way I try to put it is, if you had a good upbringing, but there were things like, I felt like I had to be low maintenance, or I felt like I had to be chill or funny, but in every other direction, your parents were good parents. Try to cut them some slack, all right, and just do better with your own kids, because a lot of times, as older sibling would always say, everyone's doing the best that they can. Now, there are people who take things to the limit, and those are the ones that you really gotta kind of be careful about. And that's why it feels like this one, because it's called Things I Thought Were My Personality but Were Actually Trauma. And there's a lot of us walking around out there like that, right? Mine was for a whole different reason. Like I said, I had very wonderful parents, but I minimized everything about my life because it took everything else to keep my trauma a secret from them. So, it was a give and take. Everybody thought I was shy. No, I was just very withdrawn because, I had been going through this trauma, because I didn't feel like I was, acceptable in any situation. And, but it just came off as me being shy or quiet, or, and as I got older and I started looking back at certain parts of my childhood, I realized what the difference between a shy kid is and a traumatized kid was. So, and I mean, if my parents just thought I was shy, that was great, because I didn't want it to hurt them. I didn't want it to hurt them. And for a lot of those people that come out and say, well, they should have known, you'd be surprised. When you're groomed young, you become Fort Knox when it comes to secrets, which in a way nowadays is great, because I'm a great secret keeper. But anyways, being the strong one, because falling apart wasn't an option, so I never let myself. That one. My mom, you gotta be strong. You gotta be strong. You gotta be strong. Okay? My dad was the one, oh, you're gonna cry about it now? I love my parents, but nobody's perfect. But my mom, you gotta be the strong one. So I was never really allowed to fall apart. It was kind of like, you can't let the world walk over you. Crying isn't going to help. But being angry was, right? Yeah, no, crying isn't going to help. It's like, I wonder what life would have been like if I didn't have to hide my crying, when I did cry, because it's just kind of like, But like I said, nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. And I was raised by a generation that was taught to suppress, right? I mean, and they were really taught to suppress. And every generation before them, was kind of the same way. We don't talk about it. We just have to be strong because we have to make it through. To be honest with you, Gen X and on, we have no idea how good we really have it. Okay, we've had TVs, we've had cell phones in our lifetimes, we've had all kinds of different radios. Last night I dreamt I was trying to find a stereo with a cassette tape on it, because there was I found tapes that my mom had made, and I just wanted to hear her voice, which I don't have. But, the mixtape, that was a big thing, right? But I just kind of like, wow, tape recorder. And it was hard. It was hard to find one of those, even in my dreams. So, but we were taught to be strong, the strong ones, that we can't break down. We have to take care of everyone. I know people who felt in their own childhood that they were kind of the adult raising their parents. And so they had to be the strong one. They weren't really allowed to be a kid, right? Because everything was about taking care of those people, because, they obviously weren't doing their job. So as a parent, so, it was... There's a lot of different factors that go into these. Now, I'm just sharing my experiences through these, which, like I said, they're very minimal, because I haven't been through, a lot of what other people have gone through. But if any of these resonate with you, now's the time to really kind of say, how can I move this in the direction that I can heal these things, So you don't always have to be the strong one. you can lean on other people. It's hard to reach out for help. It really is. It's not an easy thing because a lot of people think that, reaching out for help means that you're weak. And I'm also going to get to that because I think being independent, because I learned not to rely on anyone ever, kind of goes with being strong, right? We feel like, we have to be the independent one. And this is something that I went through with my own personal trauma, was because, I spent so much time feeling like I wasn't worthy, even though I was very loved on my parents' end. Like they never made me not feel unloved. I always felt loved. I always felt like, they were my safe place. And for a long time, that actually got in the way, even as an adult, because I felt like, okay, well, I can always run back to them because everything's safe there. Or I can always reach out to mom because she'll be there and pray for me. Or I can always reach out to dad because there's always the hug from either one of my parents. But because of that, it's like, I did move to another county away from home, but when they weren't around, and even when they were around, I just felt like I really had to depend on myself. Like I couldn't really depend on anybody else. And there are ways that I have depended on other people, but when I say this in the sense that I felt, you can't rely on anyone ever, I struggle with asking for help. I really struggle with asking for help on any level, Like people would come up to me at work, well, why didn't you ask for help? You're walking down the hall with like 5 boxes, right? It's like, no, I got it. You can't see over the boxes. I'm not that tall, but you can't see over the boxes. But no, I got it. I'm just looking out the side. And then, but someone's kind enough to just take a box, and then someone else sees it and takes a box, and then everybody lines up behind you like little ducklings following their mom. And then, and then it's like, wow, that was a lot easier. I should have just asked for help. But for me, it wasn't just about being independent. It was more, I don't want to bother anyone. And I think that comes again from being in a position where you just don't feel like you matter, where you feel like you're not worthy of somebody else's help. And so there's a lot of different versions of feeling like you need to be independent. I can't rely on anyone ever. I know the same person I was talking about earlier, they have trouble asking for help because they had to depend on themselves pretty much their entire life. So it's a very catch-22 situation, right? It's a very difficult situation. So Sammy says, I have a hard time asking for help. Oh, hi, good morning, T. I know, I need to text you. I'm so sorry. Everything's just been so crazy. Oh yeah, or you have to prove yourself. Yeah, that's another one, right? Or you feel like you have to prove yourself. Especially if you grew up saying, oh, well, you can't do that. It's like, oh yeah, watch me. And then, you end up hurting yourself because you're trying to prove yourself, prove that, you can do all these things. So being the strong one and being independent to me really kind of go together. You were never allowed to fall apart, but you felt like you couldn't rely on anyone either because they, who was there to help? So, and especially if you're the oldest, right? Like if you're the oldest child or the dependable one, suddenly everything falls on your shoulders. Like, you're the one responsible for the world around you, when your parents aren't around. And then if one person messes up, it doesn't fall on them, it falls on you. Now, again, I'm speaking out of my ass with that one, but I know enough people who were the older children that went through that and just kind of like, really? Because I'm an only child. I do adopt my siblings, but, I mean, as an adult I have, but I'm an only child. So I didn't have to worry about that part. Although, in a way I did, because if something got broken in the house or whatever, I was the first one to get blamed. But fortunately I had good parents that kind of took responsibility. For example, my dad dropped a glass one time and broke it. And he just, he swept it up, threw it away. And, that was it. That was the end of it. But my mom's like, where'd the glass go? Blah, blah, blah. What happened to it? And it's just like, and then all of a sudden it's like, Shelly Marie, did you break the blah, blah, blah? And it's like, no. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'd know if I broke a glass. But it's like, why do you automatically go to me? First of all, that glass was on the top shelf. I'd have to climb up onto the counter, which I could do back then, and grab it. But it's like, when you're short like me and you have to monkey your way up to a top shelf, you learn how to not drop things. You just keep putting it on lower shelves until you're on the floor again. So, but my dad's like, no, I broke it. And my mom's like, well, why didn't you say anything? So why did I need to? I cleaned it up and I threw it away. But I'm just sitting there and I'm just looking at her like, I mean, I didn't do that face because I probably would have gotten in trouble for it. But I was like, yeah, see, I didn't break it. Don't blame everything on me. I did say that though. I'm all like, well, yeah, see, I'm all, see, why you always blame me first? I mean, I am the clumsy one in my family. I admit, I am the clumsy one in my family. But still, it doesn't mean I did it. So anyways, being the independent one, and okay, Sammy, you're the oldest. So, share a little bit about, whether these are some of the truths about, how you had to be the independent one and take care of everybody else. I'm not sure if that's your story or if that's anything that you had to go through, but I'm just curious if it was. My father was the oldest of all of his siblings. And my my grandparents, my paternal grandparents were not the greatest parents in the world. So, when there's a difference, because my dad does have three older half siblings. I mean, they've all passed, but out of his actual siblings, my dad is the oldest of 8, and there's a difference of 17 years between him and the youngest. So, when they got older, it kind of felt like, they were a little responsible for some of the younger ones. I mean, even my dad says sometimes now, I wonder what would have happened if, and it's like, you can't take responsibility for that. You didn't give birth to these kids. And it's like, I know that you wanted to do something and help them out and try to be better, but it's like, that's what your parents were supposed to do. You were off having a life. You were off, getting married and having kids and all this stuff. So, Sammy says, I tried to deflect the blame off of my younger sibs a lot, I think. Yeah, and see, I totally get that, right? And T says, I'm the oldest, still have to carry that burden, be the strong one. Yeah, and I actually know somebody else who is the oldest. They had an older sibling who passed away when they were, when he was little, but he always seemed to try to protect his younger brother. And because of that, there grew a lot of resentment towards one of the parents. So, so yeah, it always feels like the oldest sibling ends up having to kind of carry the burden to protect the younger ones. And then sometimes, and now I can't speak for your guys' siblings, but sometimes in people that I've known who have done this for their family members, the younger siblings just kind of seem like, oh yeah, you're making a big deal out of nothing. It's like, dude, you have no idea what I did for you when you were young. So that you could go off and live this great life, while I have to carry all this crap. So, I mean, I don't know if that's what you two have ever had to go through or, but yeah, and T, I mean, I feel bad that, you have to carry that burden of still being the strong one. I mean, you're all adults now, they need to pick up their slack and start acting like adults. You should not have to be responsible for your siblings once they're adults. I mean, we might care about them. Yes. We might want to make sure they're okay. Yes. Having adopted my siblings as an adult, I do worry about them. I do care about them, and I do want them to all do well. But I realize too that when we're strong for everybody else, they don't learn how to be strong. Now, I'm not saying that's you guys. I'm not saying that's what you're going through. I just know that for me, because I try to do so much in a different direction or in one direction, that, I don't always give people the leeway they need to get stronger, to be stronger, because I do everything for them. So, and that's kind of a catch-22, right? Because you want to help and you want to make sure they're okay and that they get better and all this stuff. But at the same time, you're kind of like, oh, what do I do? So it's like, I can't just let them flail in the wind. So I can see where, as an older sibling, that would be, that would be a problem, or something that it's exactly like T says, it is a burden. It is a burden to always have to be the strong one. And of course, when you're the oldest, right, you're the one that's expected to take care of your parents, so let's see. What's the next one? Oh, here's the last one. Being a perfectionist because mistakes were punished, not understood. So I never had this problem with my parents. I did have this problem with myself. Up until recently, I always tried to be a perfectionist. But for me, because of the trauma that I went through, it was more like I had to prove myself. I had to prove that, again, it came down to that worthiness, right? It came down to that whole thing of feeling like, well, I need to do this right and I need this to be perfect because I need people to see that I'm capable of doing these things. And see, Sammy says, exactly, I took care of mom with little help. Exactly, right? Now, in my situation, I am the only child, so it does fall on me. And I don't want to say the burden falls on me. It doesn't. It's not really a burden. It's just, my dad is a good dad. And so, because I told my dad, he's like, well, I really appreciate you coming down to help me and this and that. And, and this was the first time around. And the second time around, he said the same thing. But the first time around, I told him, I said, look, you know what? If you were an asshole, I wouldn't be here. Straight out. And I did. I told him, if you were an asshole, I wouldn't be here. So thank you for being a good dad. Now, and then I know T's mom lives with her, so she's responsible for taking care of her mom. So, you and Sammy should be friends because you two understand what it's like to have the siblings and have to be the one to take care of them and to look after them and, be really the responsible one for everybody else because, they all just go off and live their lives while you're, left holding the bag, right? Holding the family bag. And I think if you're a younger sibling that is watching this and you have an older sibling and you think that, maybe your sibling says, well, I'm the one doing this, I'm the one doing that. Stop and think about why they're saying it. Okay, that doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that your older sibling did such a good job of protecting you and keeping you, to a point where you can go off and live your life and be happy and do things that you don't have to worry about it. And, give them a little thanks. Say thank you to them. Call them up and say, hey, you know what? Thanks for doing all this for me. Thanks for, deflecting, as Sammy put it, all this stuff, so I didn't have to deal with it. Or like with T, thanks for taking care of mom, because, I can go off and do whatever I want and I don't have to worry that, something's going to happen to her. So, okay, yeah, I remember that Sammy's mom lived with her until she passed away a few years ago. So, and I remember us talking a lot about that, and it's hard, right? It's hard because you got left holding the bag. I don't mean holding the bag in a disrespectful way because it's your mom. And, if you're a parent and your child is taking care of you, I hope that you are like my dad. And I don't need to be appreciated, but I don't need to be taken advantage of as well. And he doesn't take advantage of me. He appreciates everything I've done for him. I'm able to go out and just kind of do my own thing. And, I try not to veer too far from home because in case he needs me and I need to get back right away. And as he got better, I would venture off a little farther, but there is a give and take a little bit. So, if you're the younger sibling or you're the parent that's watching this, that's being taken care of, just give your child or your sibling a bit of appreciation. I'm not trying to brag about my dad. I promise you I'm not. My dad has always been very independent. I think a lot of these things my dad would, fit into. I think he had to be the independent one because he really couldn't rely on anyone. And that's why it's hard for him to ask for help. And that's why when he falls down, he lays on the floor for a couple of hours because he doesn't want to ask for help until it's kind of like you have to force it on him because he's not used to needing someone to help him. Unless it was my mom, but my mom's gone now. Or, he had to be the strong one because he was the oldest. And I think that's where he met his match, because I would have to say, if there were two strong-willed people in my life, it was my parents, but I think my mom won the gold medal on that one, hands down. She was stubborn. My dad had a little bit more give than my mom did. But my mom, I'm sure, had other stuff she had to deal with growing up. So my grandmother, like I said in previous shows, there's a reason we called her the general, So and being chill, because showing emotions wasn't safe, in the sense. Now, I don't know about you two, but Sammy and T, but do you feel like you have to hold your emotions back because you have to take care of everybody else's needs first? Or in your case, T, your mom. It's like, I'm sure there are times when your mom just irritates the crap out of you. And, it's kind of like you have to walk away, go into your yard or whatever, and just decompress. I'm not saying that your mom is a bad person. I'm just saying, I'm sure there's times where it gets a little tense. And, I'm just curious if that's something that happens, and if, so let's see. Sammy says, I think as we age, that happens more often. We don't want to admit we aren't as capable as we used to be, and we actually need help. Yeah, but my dad's been that way his whole life. So is my mom. And that's what my mom tried to instill in me. It's like, well, you have to be the strong one. You have to be stronger than you are. I'm worried about you. What happens? And this is before she was dying. What happens if I die? How are you going to be strong? And I never realized how much I depended on, their strength. But I also didn't realize how much strength I had until after she died. I didn't realize that everything I went through as a child, I had to be strong. And I think the reason my mom probably thought I wasn't strong, and this is something I journaled, I truly believe the reason my mom didn't think I was strong was because when I was around my parents, I didn't have to be, because they were strong for me. But when I wasn't around them, I had to be the strong one in my life. I had to be the one that, that was independent and didn't need help, and had to be the perfectionist and tried to make people laugh because I wanted them to like me, not hurt me. I just wanted them to like me. Just all those things. So, Sammy says she's always held her emotions back. I get that. I've done that a lot too. And T says, I hate to ask for help. I'm expected to be able to do it on my own. I love my mom. I'm glad she lives with me, but I wish my sisters would help. Yeah, and that's the sucky part, right? And a lot of times I think they just think, oh, well, she's got it handled. She doesn't need my help. And I don't know if you've asked for help and have just been turned down or what. But just it is hard. And T, like me, is a Capricorn, so really not easy to ask for help. I'm not saying that it, like star signs are like that, but Capricorns are very independent. We're a little bit, it's just a stubbornness in us. We don't want to ask for help because we want to prove that we can do it. And I don't know, it's like going through life thinking that you always have something to prove until one day you just wake up and go, you know what, I don't give a shit anymore. It's like, you know what, this is me and this is what you get. And I've learned to ask for help. Older sibling has helped me learn how to ask for help. And, but the funny thing is, she's terrible at asking for help. And hers are for the same reason as mine. I don't want to bother anyone. So it's kind of like our independence came in a very different way, as opposed to no one's going to help me, or, the independence, you learn not to rely on anyone ever. As only children, even baby sibling. I mean, baby sibling has a half brother, but she was basically raised an only child. So, you kind of learn to be independent in a weird way, because you really don't have anyone to rely on except your parents, and if they're not home, like, say you're at school, or you've gotten home from school and your parents are still at work, you're the one that has to make your snacks. You're the one that has to do this, that, and the other until they get home. and then when you're older, you are given chores and you're expected to do things, and you don't have anyone there telling you to do it. They're just saying, hey, have this done before I get home. So there is a level of independence that comes from being an only child as well, which also makes it hard to ask for help because, you're not used to that. So, let's see. Okay, so T says it. She says, if I asked once, I felt like I shouldn't have to ask again. I agree. I agree. It's a weird situation. It really is. Like I said, I have a story that I would love to share, but it's not my story to share, so I'm not going to. But it's rolling around in my head, and all I can think of is how, there was a lot of imbalance with someone I know and the care of one of their parents. And this person did not live nearby, but ended up carrying the responsibility and the burden of taking care of this parent. While another sibling nearby was just not doing anything or not as much. They felt, well, I'm taking care of this, so you can do all of that. And it's like, it was very imbalanced. But let's see. Oh, yeah. And Sammy says, that's it. I think I felt that I shouldn't have to ask. You know what? Exactly, right? Sometimes, like I said, I didn't grow up with siblings, but I grew up, being somewhat independent. But as you get older, there's just things that you feel people should know. Why do I have to ask you for help? You see me here, right? Struggling, doing all these things, but you don't ask for help. And I think that's where resentment and anger comes up, right? Because we don't want to ask for help because we just think, and I don't know if this is where you guys are coming from, but this is what's hitting my brain, is that, we just think that people should know, right? But that's where I think we also make the mistake. You need to ask for help. It's hard. It's difficult, but you need to ask for help. You need to be okay with asking for help because you know what? You have needs too, and you are allowed to have needs. Just because we're responsible, just because we know what needs to be done, doesn't mean other people are going to pick up on that. When you spend your life protecting younger siblings, they're just going to think you're always going to do it. So that's where the catch-22 comes in, right? You just automatically think, oh, okay. And, this is how it is with certain things, like with older sibling. When she had her rotator cuff surgery, I was her primary caregiver. I had to do everything for her because she couldn't move her arm. And unfortunately, it was also her dominant arm. Now, I'm a little more ambidextrous, so if I hurt my right arm or my right hand, I can still do things with my left. Not necessarily right, but I can do other things, the ancillary things I can do. And so, so a lot of that is just, trying to get someone better. But as she started getting better and as she came out of the big old contraption she was in, she still wasn't doing a lot of things for herself. And I started getting angry because it's like, if you need help, you need to ask me. Don't just expect me to do it. But then I was also expecting her to get up and do it, not realizing that her arm was still weak because she was just starting physical therapy. So there is a place where we need to speak up and meet in the middle. So let's see. T says, it reminds me of Liz and how her daughter would not help her and neighbors and sister. Yeah. We have a friend that passed away almost a year ago. And it annoyed me. Her daughter had a lot going on in her, rolling around in her mind. And everything was her mother's fault. Now, I wasn't there during her upbringing, but listening to her sister and her neighbors, it's like it wasn't until her mother really started showing signs of failing health that suddenly it's like, oh, okay. And then she tried to make it seem like she was the world's perfect daughter. No. My friend cried more times over how much her daughter was not there for her. Her son-in-law tried to be, her grandchildren tried to be, but her daughter, no. There was a lot of resentment for whatever reason. There was never, let me sit down and talk to my mom to understand why she did some of the things she did. No, she just took the other route and just decided to blame her for everything. And And yeah, and T's right, but she always wanted her mom to drop everything for her. Like if they went out of town, hey, can you house sit for me? Even though she was in failing health. But Liz's neighbor and her sister really picked up the slack. They really picked up the slack. They did so much for her, and yet the funny thing is what made her the happiest was towards the end when her daughter really was there finally for her, because I think she realized, oh my God, my mom's dying, and so I know T and I have a lot to say about that, and I don't want to go too far because I don't want to get myself in trouble. So, but anyways, just remember all these things, okay? I'm going to read them one last time and then I'm going to let y'all go. So, being low maintenance because they learned early to not have needs. You're allowed to have needs. And to my friends who have siblings, you guys need to start speaking up and telling them, hey, you know what? You need to get more involved. You need to be more involved. Well, with Sammy, her mom has already passed. But T, you got to tell your siblings, you guys need to pitch in a little bit more. And I'm sure you've tried. I know you and I have talked about that, and I'm sure you tried. But either that or just tell your mom, look, you know what? You're here with me. I love you. You're here for a reason. Just chill. Okay? And again, speaking of chill, being chill, because showing emotions wasn't safe, so I shut them down. Let it out, guys. Let it out. If you don't want to cry about it, you don't want to scream about it. Sometimes if I get so frustrated, I scream into a pillow. I've only done that twice, but I found it to be very therapeutic both times I have done it. But mostly I just journal. And if I really need to get out, I will go out to a little coffee place and I will journal my little heart out. Or I'll color. I'll do something that will get my anxiety to just go down a couple notches. Being funny, because if I could make you laugh, maybe you wouldn't hurt me. Whatever reason you were funny for, whether it was to make people like you or to make people not want to hurt you, whatever it is, just be yourself. Be yourself. If you are a funny person, I think I'm funny, but I'm probably only funny to myself. But that's okay, because as long as I'm laughing, someone's laughing, right? But I realized that a lot of my funny is just, it's my personality. And it's no longer hiding the pain, because a lot of times people will be funny so people don't, suspect anything's wrong. And that was me. I had a lot of hidden trauma, and I didn't want people to think I was sad all the time or angry all the time. So I just tried to be funny, and even if that meant throwing myself under the bus. So being the strong one and being independent, because falling apart wasn't an option, so I never let myself, and because I learned not to rely on anyone ever. Ask for help, guys. I know it's hard. I struggle with it again myself, but don't be afraid to ask for help, because you deserve that, and you have done enough in this world for the people around you and the siblings that that followed you. You were allowed to ask for help. And being a perfectionist, because mistakes were punished, not understood. My mistakes were never really punished. Well, I did get in trouble for talking a lot in school. And a lot of it was one of those where it's like somebody talks to me and I respond, and then I would be the one that got caught. And I'm not saying that I was innocent, because I can be a chatterbox, obviously. But yeah, so, but it wasn't, I would get in trouble and I would get grounded, and my parents tried to do all these different things to just make me not talk in class anymore. But I mean, that's kind of on the lower rung of things. I did get in trouble sometimes for talking back, because, especially when you're a teenager, right? You start having your own thoughts and your own ideas, and you start feeling a little more independent than you really are in reality. But yeah, if you don't have to be a perfectionist. Mistakes are okay. All right. I make mistakes all the time. And I'm not ashamed of them anymore like I used to be. If I lost my shit, I'd just be like, well, I'm sorry, but you. It's like, no, you know what? I should have handled it better. I handled it inappropriately, and I should have handled it better. Whether you're right or wrong, okay? Just let it be. So there's that. All right. So those are it. Those are it for Self-Care Wednesday. I kind of stumbled through that one. I thought it would be a little bit easier, but it wasn't. But next week we're going to go to Karma Gaia, and the Karma Gaia thing was a lot of cognitive things, cognitive distortions. It's overcoming cognitive distortions, and there are 5 of them. So that will get us through the week, next week, and then I'll try to come up with something else. But yeah, I've been wanting to do that one. I wrote it down a long time ago. It was supposed to be one of my shows before I went on eternal hiatus. And like I said, I'm still a little discombobulated right now, so I'm going to not have a show for the rest of the week, but I will be back on Monday. Again, I will be back on Monday. Oh, no, Monday is a holiday, isn't it? Oh, Monday's a holiday. I usually don't do holidays. I try to keep a schedule where I don't do holidays. So, okay, we'll start Tuesday, and that'll bring us into the following Monday. So anyways, but yeah, so yeah. Oh, you know what? I think we'll make it work. It doesn't need to be, this is where the perfectionism comes in, right? Where you're sitting there going, it has to be Monday through Friday. There's perfectly 5 of them. No, we're just going to go with the flow. We're going to go with the flow, and we're going to do these as we do them. And who knows, maybe it'll be the perfect thing because you'll have the weekend to think about a few of them and go through it before you tie it up at the end, right? So it's all good. It's all good. We'll go with the flow. So I will see you next Tuesday on the 27th. All right. So I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching. Sammy T, thank you for popping on. And Troy, I think I saw you in there earlier. Thank you all for popping on and for your feedback. This was good feedback, especially for people who were the oldest siblings in their family. So again, I don't have siblings. I adopt my siblings. So, So Muddy T, thank you girls so much. I love you both. And thank you for watching. And I will see everybody next Tuesday. Have a great day.